Hi, today we'll be talking about the relative age effect and how this affects our young athletes' talent pathways. The relative age effect refers to the advantage enjoyed by athletes born earlier in a selection year compared to those born later. In an age-grouped sports systems, athletes can differ in age up to 11 months, yet they are often treated as equals. Research consistently shows that relatively older athletes are overrepresented in talent identification and development systems, while relatively younger athletes are underrepresented. Relative age effect is therefore not an individual trait, but a structural factor that shapes who is identified as talented and who receives development opportunities. Biologically, relatively older athletes within an age group are often more physically mature, particularly during childhood and adolescence. They tend to be taller, stronger, faster, and more coordinated, which makes them appear more capable during trials and competitions. Psychologically, relative age effect has mixed effects. Relatively older athletes often develop higher confidence and perceived competence because they are selected more often and received positive feedback. In contrast, relatively younger athletes may face repeated deselection, reduced playing time, and fewer development opportunities, while some later born athletes develop greater resilience, adaptability, and psychological toughness. Many drop out of sport altogether due to frustration and lack of opportunity. This highlights that relative age effect does not simply affect performance, it shapes motivation, self-belief, and long-term participation. Relative age effect is reinforced by social structures within sport. Selection policies, scouting practices, and cultural expectations often prioritize short-term performance over long-term development. Coaches may feel pressure to win, leading them to favour athletes who are physically dominant at young ages, typically those born in the earlier selection year. These social pressures normalise early success and marginalise late developers, even though long-term elite performance does not require early physical dominance. Many talent identification and development systems unintentionally amplify relative age effect. Academies, representative teams, and national pathways frequently select athletes between ages 8 to 14, precisely when biological maturation differences are greatest. Research across football, ice hockey, rugby, and basketball consistently shows a birthdate bias in academy and national youth squads, with relatively older athletes dominating selection lists. This narrows the development pool, excluding potentially high-ceiling late developers before they have a chance to mature. Relative age effect is closely linked to early specialization, which we talked about in the first video. Because relatively older athletes are selected earlier, they are more likely to enter intensive single-sport pathways, receive higher training loads, and specialize sooner. This early advantage can lock athletes into elite pathways, while relatively younger peers are excluded, not because of lack of talent, but because of timing within selection systems. One of the most cited examples of relative age effect comes from Canadian ice hockey. Research showed that elite youth and professional hockey players were disproportionately born in the first few months of the selection year. This bias was later observed in the NHL, demonstrating how early structural advantages in youth sport can translate into professional outcomes. Importantly, the effect was not due to superior innate talent, but to early access to better coaching and competitions. Relative age effect is also well documented in European football academies. Research found that elite youth football squads across multiple European countries showed strong representation of players born in early in the selection year. Ironically, some world-class players such as Lionel Messi, born in June, would likely have been at risk of deselection in early systems due to late physical development, highlighting how rigid talent identification structures can overlook long-term potential. This is why I agree, because football has produced so many talents like Lionel Messi that have overcome these circumstances.